Something lived in my apartment walls. True horror story. Part 1. The lease was too good to be true. I had just moved to a new city. Clean break, fresh start, the whole 9 yards. After weeks of searching, I found a place that was somehow both within my budget and in a good neighborhood. A charming old apartment on the top floor of a creaky building built sometime before World War II. The online listing said the previous tenant left in a hurry, so the landlord was offering a steep discount to fill it quickly. Red flag? Maybe, but rent is rent. When I arrived with my suitcases, the landlord, a wiry man with nicotine-stained fingers and a voice like gravel, handed me the keys with a tight smile. "Last tenant didn't stay long," he said as he pushed the door open. "Quiet sort. Barely knew he was here until, well, never mind." I should have asked more questions, but the apartment was everything I needed. The sunlight spilled through the tall windows, dust motes swirling like lazy ghosts in the air. Everything was still furnished. A worn leather couch, a heavy wooden dining table, and an old bookshelf filled with yellowing paperbacks. It was strange, sure, but it felt lived in, like someone had loved it once. That night, as I unpacked, I noticed a framed photo still sitting on the mantel. A black and white portrait of a man in his 30s, face gaunt, eyes sunken, with a smile that didn't quite reach them. I figured it had been left behind and made a mental note to return it to the landlord. But when I picked it up, I felt cold, like I had touched something rotten that hadn't quite started to smell. I dropped it immediately, glass shattering on the wooden floor. I swept it up and tossed it in the trash. That should have been the end of it. But just before bed, I walked past the mantel, and the photo was back, frame unbroken, staring at me with that same sunken grin. Part 2. The photo that wouldn't stay gone. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept the photo in a drawer, just to be sure. I even wrapped it in an old t-shirt and placed it under some kitchen towels. Out of sight, out of mind. But even then, I could feel it. Like there was a pressure in the room, a presence, watching from just outside the corners of my vision. At around 2:47 a.m., I woke to a soft creaking. Not unusual in a building this old, but this wasn't just wood settling. It was rhythmic, like footsteps. The next morning, I checked the drawer. The photo was gone. It wasn't in the kitchen. It wasn't in the trash. Not even under the couch. I was just beginning to question my own sanity when I passed the hallway mirror and saw it. There it was, hanging directly behind me on the wall, perfectly centered. The frame was pristine. The man's grin, wider than before. I didn't hang it there, and I didn't imagine it. Art 3. The grin in the mirror. I tore the photo down instantly. My fingers trembled as I gripped the frame, and for a second, just a split second, I thought I saw the man's eyes flick toward me in the glass reflection. I smashed it. Over and over. The glass broke easily, but the photo didn't tear. It was like trying to rip through leather with your bare hands. Thick, resistant, wrong. Finally, I shoved the entire thing into a garbage bag and sprinted it outside, dropping it in the dumpster behind the building. My hands were bleeding from the broken glass. My heart was beating like I'd just run for miles. But I felt relief, like I'd finally closed a door. That night, I slept with the lights on. But at exactly 2:47 a.m. again, the creaking returned. This time, I didn't freeze. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed toward the bedroom door. The handle twitched again, the same subtle movement as before. I flung it open. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but something felt off. The air was cold, not just chilly, but wet and thick, like walking into a basement that had been sealed for years. My skin prickled. I walked toward the living room, each step slower than the last. And there, on the coffee table, was the photo. Clean, unbroken, the man still grinning, but now his head was slightly tilted, as if curious, as if watching me. I dropped my phone. I didn't even remember screaming until my throat went raw. He had come back, and this time, he brought the smell of soil and rot with him. Part 4. Dirt beneath the floorboards. The next morning, I tried to convince myself I had dreamt it all. The photo? Maybe I had just imagined bringing it back inside. Sleepwalking, hallucinating. Anything was better than the alternative. But the smell wouldn't go away. It lingered in the apartment like mildew mixed with decay. Thick, heavy, clinging to my skin no matter how many times I showered. I checked the vents, the drains. I even lifted up a few floorboards under the old rug in the living room. That's when I found the dirt. It shouldn't have been there. I lived on the 3rd floor. There was no reason for actual soil to be beneath the wooden boards. And yet, it was there. Damp, black, and packed tight like something had been buried there and left to rot. I dug with a knife, carefully, until I hit something. Cloth. A shredded piece of what looked like a shirt. And beneath it, bone. Human bone. I dropped everything and backed away. I called the landlord, demanded an explanation. He told me no one named Isaac Everell had ever rented the apartment. I told him about the mail, the photo, the floorboards. He laughed nervously, said I must be mistaken. Then right before hanging up, he whispered something I'll never forget. You weren't supposed to find him. Click. That night, I locked every door and window. I sealed the photo inside the oven. I turned on every light and tried to stay awake. But at 2:47 a.m., the lights flickered and died. In the darkness, I heard the floorboards groan and the sound of something dragging itself across the soil beneath them. Part 5. The tenant in the walls. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat on the floor back against the farthest wall from the living room, holding a kitchen knife with shaking hands. Every creak in the old building echoed like a gunshot through the silence. But it wasn't just creaking now. It was whispering. Faint, breathy murmurs pressed against my ear, crawling through the walls like insects behind wallpaper. I couldn't understand the words at first, until they repeated, over and over again. You took my place. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed from inside the wall behind me. I leapt to my feet, heart in my throat. The drywall began to bulge outward, like something was pressing against it from within. Then, a long, pale hand burst through the plaster, fingers twisted, nails black and curling like roots. I ran. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't look back. I just ran out the front door, down the stairwell, and into the freezing night air. I stood on the sidewalk in nothing but my shirt and shorts, barefoot, panting, trembling. The apartment window was dark. But something was looking out. A gaunt, eyeless face pressed to the glass, mouth stretched in a grin far too wide for any living man. Its skin looked like it had never seen daylight, and yet it watched me like it remembered sunlight, like it remembered being me. The police didn't believe me. When they investigated, they found nothing under the floorboards. No photo, no body, no damage to the walls. The landlord claimed I'd never signed a lease, that no one named Isaac Everill had ever existed, not as a tenant, not even in the building's records. But the building knows. Every night, someone new moves in. Every few weeks, I check online for the address. A new listing, a new name. It's always the same apartment. Always recently available. I know what happened now. I was never the first, and I won't be the last. Psst, thank you for staying till the end. If your heart's still beating, maybe it's time to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be waiting here every week with a new nightmare just for you. Remember, in the silence, something always listens back.